Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Baschamania podcast. I am Justin Basch. This is episode 191, and today we have an Easter special with Aaron Nagao, who just had an amazing redshirt freshman season at Minnesota, and he's in the transfer portal with 3 years of eligibility left. So you know what? I said with all the NIL and transfer portal talk, let's go right to the source. Let's have an athlete on. Let's hear their perspective. Let's hear their side of it. I'd be remiss not to ask an athlete if they want to come on, and Aaron wanted to come on. So happy to chat with him today. Before we dive in, this show is brought to you by our friends at Attack, ATAC. Attack is such a cool app, and they've upgraded to a whole new level. They now have these video game stats meeting real life training. It's like a real life FIFA video game. So you can input all your stats. Some of the best wrestlers in the world insert their stats, and you can actually see where you stack up against other athletes. And if you go to Attack on social, on Instagram, they're attack.app, ATAC.app, and you can see some of the highest rating guys. You can see how athletes like Trent Hidley, he's got a 91 right now. Nate Jackson just input his. I'm not sure of his score, but I know he's on there. So super cool stuff. Download the Attack app today, ATAC. It's in the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. Let me know what your score is. Post it, tag us. I'm going to have to find out what my score is, but I'm a little out of shape, so I'm a little nervous, but definitely download the Attack app. Let's all level up. We are back. Baschamania 191. Happy Easter Resurrection Sunday. Aaron Nagao, how are you?
Great. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's a beautiful sunny day here in upstate New York, and it's a busy week, so I don't mind doing this on Easter. Glad we can get this out there. I think your story, as we were just talking about, your story is super cool with what you've been through. And obviously, you made a name for yourself this year in the regular season, and then in the postseason, and then in the off season. So thought it'd be a good chance for people to kind of hear your perspective, your story, and everything. So let's start at the beginning, because you posted a super cool video a couple of weeks ago on Instagram about being born with a rare disease. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was born with X-linked lymphoproliferative disease, also known as XLP for short. And basically it's a blood disorder where your immune system just doesn't function, it breaks down. So essentially, if you get any type of disease, you're eventually going to pass because you have an immune system to protect yourself. I was actually the first male in my family to survive it. So my brother and my brother was the second. So it was really deadly, and it's super, super rare. And yeah, that's the disease I was born with, but we're all good to go now.
What age? So you're born with that, and then for what, your first couple of years, or what was that process like early on? Like, how long does that last for before you really know, like, okay, hey, I survived it, I'm kind of good now?
Yeah. So I ended up getting a bone marrow transplant, I think at 3 years old,
Yeah.
4 years old, around there. And that's because I had 100% match with that bone marrow transplant. That was able to save me. I mean, also definitely God blessed me with that opportunity. And then my brother had it a little earlier. He had at 1 year old, I think, or maybe even less than a year old. He was good to go with also a bone marrow transplant.
That's crazy, man. My son's 14 months old. I can't imagine just the worry of going through that as a parent. I know at one, you're kind of too young to really know what's going on, but man, that's crazy. And then you're kind of interesting because you started in jiu-jitsu first, and I think that's going to be more common as MMA becomes more mainstream. You're going to want to have kids start MMA younger. And so you were in jiu-jitsu first and then wrestling, but what got you into combat sports at a young age?
So it was big part of it was being that I was sick and I had to go through chemo and everything like that. My parents just wanted me to start that so I could get my body stronger again. And so at 6 years old, I started jiu-jitsu, and it was just to build confidence and build my body and build some strength. And I ended up falling in love with it for a long time, and I still love it, but I'm in wrestling now, so I put that on
What got
pause.
you big from being in jiu-jitsu and loving it to wrestling? What was that got you?
Yeah, so I was really big in jiu-jitsu. I trained at AOJ, and I that's probably the best jiu-jitsu gym in the world now. I feel, along with a bunch of other people, but I started wrestling actually to help my jiu-jitsu. In jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of the same points with wrestling. So
Yeah.
takedowns are a big thing, and I started wrestling to help my takedowns and some athleticism there. But I ended up going to Iowa Nationals, folk style nationals in like eighth grade. And I ended up losing in the blood round. And after that, I told my dad, I don't want to do jiu-jitsu anymore. I want to focus completely on wrestling. And he's like, all right. And that's how I switched. That's what made the switch right there.
That's awesome. And there's obviously another decision, transfer portal. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But even this early on, decision to combat sports, decision to go into wrestling. And we can't feel like get any farther in this conversation without bringing up your faith. You know, your Instagram bio kind of says it all. God has a plan. It's funny that it's Easter today, Resurrection Sunday. And, you know, you talk about God having a plan. Jeremiah 29:11 tells us not only a plan, but a purpose. And when you go through everything you've gone through from a young age, you know, we're going to talk about your season in a few minutes. You have such a powerful testimony. How has your faith played a role in allowing you to kind of get where you are today and overcome everything you have?
I know it's the greatest part that has allowed me to overcome everything that I have. And I share with everyone, God not only has a plan for me, but he has an overall plan for everybody in the world if they so choose to pursue it. You know, we're all his children, and my faith's the biggest part of my wrestling and the biggest part of my life. I really dedicated. I'm doing my best to dedicate everything I do as if I'm doing it for God. So I think I know he blesses that, and I believe he put the desire of wrestling in my heart, and I have the biggest goals that wrestling can have, and I believe he put those in my heart as well. And I just ask that, you know, when I'm wrestling, I could do it to glorify him, and that if God willing, I achieve those goals, I would do it for the ultimate goal of spreading the word. After, you know, with the platform you build, being successful in wrestling, I want to ultimately share the love of God and show others that you could be successful when you do things his way.
Yeah, and it's so cool because it's always, you know, I talk about it a lot with people on conversations all the time about how you don't see when you're in a trial or when you're in a struggle how God uses it, but it's funny how then you have success after so often, and you get to tell about, well, wait a minute, let me tell you about the struggle first.
Yeah.
And you're no exception to that. You know, you went from jujitsu to deciding to do wrestling, and then you end up in the Big Ten. You end up in the toughest wrestling conference in the country in college. What initially led you to Minnesota for college?
Yeah, so my high school coaches, I actually have a couple that wrestled for the University of Minnesota, and they're a part of it. You know, it was cool to look up to them and want to wrestle there one day. And as a kid, I've always seen Minnesota on TV and stuff, and always wanted to wrestle for them. I didn't know much about wrestling, but I felt led to wrestle at Minnesota. I felt a connection with them right away. I love the coaches and the teammates, and nothing of that has changed, even with, you know, since entering the portal. But I love Minnesota. I love the team. I love the people there, and they're just a great group of guys.
Yeah, for sure. They're doing a lot of things there. We're going to talk about the portal in a few minutes. Before we talk about that, let's talk about your season a little bit. You know, you talked about in that Instagram video the progression you've made, where I think it was your first college tournament you didn't place. And then this season as a freshman, it's really about as good as somebody can ask. Obviously, being an NCAA champ is like, you know, the pinnacle. You're damn near close to that when you lose a couple tough matches. You're runner-up at Big Tens to a guy like Roman Bravo Young. What was that process like for you, refining yourself, where I wanted to be a better wrestler? I never was able to turn that switch on and make advancements like that. For you, what was that process like, refining yourself as a wrestler to kind of take it to the next level?
Faith, consistency, and courage. I'm very consistent with the lifestyle I live. I have the lifestyle of a champion. I follow a really strict diet. I never wavered from it. When I would lose in the season, I didn't doubt. I just knew it was going to make me hungry to get better. And I just really believed, like, I firmly believed I could have won the national title that year. And I know I have the same confidence going into this season. It sucked not being able to win, but ultimately I have a lot of peace with it because I was happy with the way I performed, and I believe that God had another plan for that, and he has another plan for this season as well, and I'm gonna go in there thinking and firmly believing that I'm gonna win. And when you have a consistent lifestyle and you work hard and you have faith that God is with you and He has the outcome already written, is what I believe in the
Yep.
matches, then it's really, it makes wrestling a lot more fun in my opinion, and I can really let it fly and enjoy myself.
It's funny, man. If for people listening to this podcast who have listened over and over, the themes of having fun and consistency. I mean, Andrew Lears was just on here a couple of weeks ago talking about how he won NCAA championship, and the biggest thing he said was consistency. I never wavered. The exact verbiage you just used. He never wavered from his diet, from the rigorous lifestyle, from the sacrifice, and it pays off. And for you, you had a couple random losses through the season. You lost to Fix, had another loss, but in the postseason, you seem to turn it up. You take out Bird and Mendez and OT. Again, you think you lost like 6-4 to Roman. When you have those big matches and you win some of those big matches, and you're already confident, you're already going into the season confident, you have what it takes. What's it like when you get a few of those big matches in under your belt?
It's great. You're priming at the right time, right? So, I've had losses in the regular season that I I wouldn't lose in the postseason. You lose in the regular season, it sucks. I hate losing, but I think that was a part of the process. And ultimately I could care less looking back that I lost in the postseason, as long as I'm doing greater in the postseason, because
Yep.
the postseason is really what matters, right? The NCAA is the ultimate goal. So it tells me that I'm doing something right with my training and I'm priming correctly.
Yeah. And I mean, for a redshirt freshman to go in there, the NCAAs, and, you lose to a couple of all-time greats, Roman Bravo Young, Dayton Fix. What was your takeaway from the NCAA tournament?
Everyone's human. Everyone isn't, no one's unstoppable. I could score points on them. We all start the match 0-0. So there's really no advantage that they have other than a seed number right by their name, if that means anything. So, it just shows me that I'm wrestling another human being who probably has something else going on in his life. So, no one's going in there perfect, but
Yeah.
you can go in there confident.
Yeah, you got to have the confidence. I mean, I think you've seen it this year. There's, you see Spencer going down in the semis, and, credit to Spencer. He did an interview and said, guys, I wasn't injured. Like, Matt Ramos just was the better wrestler that day. And Matt Ramos went into that match with confidence. And when you go into it with confidence, like you said, every match starts 0-0. When you're not going to beat somebody unless you believe you can beat them. That's just for starters. That I may have never been a high level wrestler, but you don't need to talk to too many before you'll start getting that message. You had, guys like Michael Blockhouse this year. You had teammates who were winning big matches, having upsets. What's it like when you start having that momentum with teammates?
It's pretty cool. Sometimes you don't have momentum and you got to
Yeah.
be a person to step up and win that match in the duel. Maybe you're getting your butt kicked in a duel and everyone's losing, but you got to step up and do your job. However, it's awesome when you guys have the momentum and you guys are winning matches that they shouldn't be winning, and then you go out there and you just keep that ball rolling.
Yeah.
Personally, when maybe we're not doing as great as we'd like and we have the momentum against us, I don't necessarily feel any pressure. I just continue to do my job.
Yeah.
But it is awesome when 25, maybe Pat wins a really good match or he wrestles well, then I know, oh man, I'm ready too. I'm feeling great. I'm gonna go out there and beat this guy up too. So
Yeah, that's a good feeling.
yeah.
um, for you too, like you don't you have a pretty mature outlook on losses. It's not like you go back and beat yourself up too much. If you look back on the tournament, what do you take away from a standpoint of I need to do this better? Or, when you're wrestling and you're not like bent out of shape, for lack of better words, about a loss, how do you balance taking stuff away and saying, okay, this is what happened in this match, this is what happened in this match? Do you kind of have that game plan yet? Or is it just, I need to wrestle better, period?
I kind of have an idea of what I do wrong. For like a tournament, I think about it maybe for 5 to 10 minutes and then I have to move on, right? Because I'm not done.
Yeah.
Like when I lost to Roman at the NCAs, I knew I messed up on top. I know I did. I was thinking about it in the match, like, oh, I know if I take this leg out right now, he might slip it, and that's exactly what happened. And
Yeah.
I thought about it, and I'm mad at myself after, like, man, why did I do that? But then I move on, and it's just a wrestling match, right? I can get better from it. I got to get ready for the next match. So I don't think there's a lot you can win over beating yourself up over it for too long. But yeah, I just make adjustments in my mind and talk to my coaches about it and then get ready to go for the next one.
So after this season, you had an amazing redshirt freshman year, All American, first shot. You make the tournament, you All American. That's a lot to be proud of. Big news a couple weeks into the off season, you're entering the transfer portal. And I had texted you because, there's so much talk around NIL and transfer portal. And I'm a part of that conversation. I think as wrestling fans, you love talking about it. And there's so many differences in opinions and perspectives. And that's why I was thinking, you know what? Let's go straight to the source. Let's have someone who's on the transfer portal, kind of give them a platform to talk. So for you, what went into going to the transfer portal?
My honest decision was soul searching. I want to be and self-reflecting, I laid everything out on the table. I talked to my family, particularly my dad and just close family people. I assessed all of my options, and then I just laid out my goals. I told myself, what are my goals? What do I want to do? I want to be a 3-time national champion. I want to win the Olympics. I want to win worlds. Then I want to move on to jiu-jitsu, but no, another time. Talk for another time. Hardest decision of my life. Yeah, it was. I'm not deciding to leave yet. Just because I opened the portal up, I told the coaches and I told my team, doesn't mean I'm leaving, but for me to assess these options adequately and effectively, I need to open the portal up. And ultimately, I felt led of God. This is what my heart wants, and I feel like He expects me to make a wise decision. And I felt the wisest decision was to open up the portal to see what other opportunities are out there for me and my goals. As much as wrestling is a team sport, you build a lot of camaraderie with the guys and with the coaches. It's mostly an individual sport. You don't go out there with them, you go out there alone and with the work you've put in. So another big thing about that was, I know if I didn't open the portal up, if I followed my heart, my heart loved Minnesota, but if I followed that solely, I know that would get in the way of, if you always follow your heart, you'll get in the way of God, right? He may have another plan for you, and ultimately you might not know that, but your heart may not know that, and you might want to do what you think is best, but I leave it up to God, and I know in the end I want what He wants. And maybe I don't know it at the time, but I knew if I didn't open the portal up, I would live with some form of regret, not knowing what else was out there. And I'm not going to put myself in a position later on in life to have regret. Look, if maybe I didn't open the portal up and I did accomplish all my goals, and I could just I would look back and wonder, like, man, I wish I at least looked at what my options were, and I wish I at least opened the portal up. But there's some examples in the Bible where God may have had a different plan than the others were thinking. Something that comes to mind is when David was anointed king. Saul was still king, but he anointed David,
and they're like, "You're crazy. What do you mean you're going to be king?" No.
Yeah, no one else expected it, but God knew that was how it was supposed to go down. Or when in the New Testament, when Paul and Barnabas wanted to go spread the gospel, they thought they had their own plan, and they ended up arguing, and they went their separate ways. But ultimately, that was for God's ultimate plan for them. And even I bring up Jacob and Esau. If Isaac had his way, he wanted to give Esau the birthright, but God used Jacob and his mother to do, they had to use some covert activity, but that was God's will, and Jacob ended up getting the birthright. And maybe things don't look perfect, but I'm trusting God's plan, and what I feel in my heart was best, and that was to open the portal up. And I know a lot of people may be angry, a lot of the fans, maybe some teammates and coaches, I know they're hurt. I'm also very hurt for them in the program, but I'm following my heart and I'm following my dreams. And this is a dream I've had since a kid. And I'm gonna trust myself and God completely on this, and open the portal up and do what's best for my family and I. I want to do what's best for us. And I'll fight. I'll always love my team and my coaches if I end up leaving, but this is what's best for me. I know I made the right decision. When I made the decision to open the portal up, I felt I had a lot of clarity and a lot of peace, maybe in a couple of days where I was just maybe overwhelmed and confused and not sure where to go. But when I made that decision, I had a lot of clarity and peace, and I know I made the right decision.
When did you start deciding you might want to enter the portal?
It was you asked me 2 weeks ago and it wasn't even a thought. I would probably
Right.
laugh. But you asked me a week ago, and that's when I felt the thoughts and the consideration started coming in, and I really, really assessed everything with my family, and that's when I considered opening the portal up. And I was confused that you could say a little overwhelmed initially, but I prayed a lot. I mean, I prayed a whole bunch, and I know my family was praying and others were praying, and I felt that love and that the prayers were helping, and I just had more and more clarity as the time went on, and that's when those I guess like a week ago is when those thoughts are coming in. I really had to assess where can I put myself in the best position to accomplish my dream. And so about a week ago.
I'm going to ask the question that I'm sure wrestling Twitter wants me to ask. So does this mean that nobody offered you a bag of cash to enter the portal?
Yeah.
Because that's the big thing is people in this era, people expect where it's like, hey, so-and-so had a great season. Somebody must have reached out. Iowa could use a 133-pounder. Penn State could use a 133-pounder. They must have reached out. And there's a lot of cynicism always. But with this, it's instantly somebody offered Aaron a bag of cash. Who did it? And it sounds like you're safely, unequivocally denying that anybody offered you a bag of cash.
Yeah, without even bringing that up, I said I'm following my dream in my heart, and that's priceless, but yeah, you get messages. I see things on forums and stuff. I'm like, where'd you hear that story? That's crazy.
Yeah, you can't go on wrestling forums. They're the worst. That's just. I know Willie and some people live on them. I'm the opposite. I don't go on there. I love talking wrestling, but I love talking wrestling with people who I know. I love like seeing people I know. Going to a bar with 20 people and grabbing a burger in between sessions at NCAAs. I love it. People hiding behind avatars anonymously that doesn't excite me. So you're saying that you haven't 100% decided if you're even leaving Minnesota. Do you have a favorite you're leaning if you do leave?
Yeah, I just commend you real quick for attacking the source and nipping all of that in the bud. That's just a way to hit it off the ballpark for everyone, that's great that you tack the source down and give them an opportunity to explain.
And that's why I'm one of these people that's in the conversation. I'm like, you know what? It's not easy for someone to come out and respond to people who are saying stuff. It's got to be annoying. Even I get hate just for having this podcast, and I can't respond to everybody who disagrees with me or doesn't like me. So I appreciate you coming on and even clarifying things for people. And by the way, there's still going to be people that comment and say, well, if he's getting a bag of cash, he's not going to admit to it. Listen, your reasoning was too elaborate to be a ruse. That was too much. So do you have a place, if you do leave, you're leaning towards?
I have narrowed down my options at this point. So, aside from Minnesota, I have 3 primary schools I'm looking at right now. Cornell, PSU, Penn State, and then Iowa.
3 great programs. 3, arguably 1, 2, and 3 finish next year. And where you go could ultimately decide which order that's in. I mean, you're a big presence at any of those 3 schools. Yanni is my guy. So if you go to Cornell, I'm not going to be too upset. Penn State is my team. So if you go to Penn State training with Roman's one of the best dudes I know. He's a very quiet guy, but he's just one of the greatest hearts in this sport. So personally, I hope you end up at Penn State. That's just a selfish thing. So do you know when you want to make a decision by?
I'm hoping, I have a strong feeling it'll be by the close end of this month.
Heck yeah, man. Hey, I'm going to throw it out there now. If you want to come on this podcast and announce it, we can arrange that. That might be fun.
Yeah, we can
That
get that.
that might be fun. So I know from years past that when you are transferring and going to a different school potentially, and whether it's this college or senior level, it can make off-season plans a little bit harder. Do you have any plans to compete U.S. Opens in 3 weeks? Do you have any freestyle plans for this year?
No, I'm gonna focus on folk style. I'm gonna focus on winning a national title next year.
I love it. Because you made what? Were you a 23 world team last year? I think you were fifth in the world.
Yeah.
It's not bad. that's just, that's not bad at all. So, and you already said world and Olympic aspirations. So definitely commend you for focusing on folk style right now. Going back, I want to wrap this up with, we've talked a lot about your faith playing to that decision, and I'm sure you're getting it from all angles now. What is the process like of incorporating your faith into this final decision and kind of trying to make that right decision?
Yeah, it's been the biggest part. So, I mentioned earlier I prayed every day. I pray every day anyways, but that was a big part of my prayers and of my thoughts. And I ultimately know and feel for my personal self that God is leading me in this direction. I can't imagine how I would get through this without him, honestly. So I'm just really grateful for him giving me peace and clarity and opening himself up to me. Yeah, it's been the greatest part, man. I can't even explain it enough. I'm very grateful for God and for him helping me through this. He gave, it's just a lot of peace and clarity.
I tell my wife all the time, I'm so grateful. I was a guest on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I had said that like the peace God gives you when you're making tough decisions is such a beautiful thing. Who you say, for me, it's business, who you say no to, who you say yes to. You often don't know if you make a right decision, a bad decision, or whatever, unless you pray about it and unless God gives you clarity. And a lot of times it doesn't make sense initially, but oftentimes God will show you a year later, 5 years, 10 years later, this is why when you prayed about it and I showed you that and you were faithful, this is why. So it's definitely such a crucial part. Any young wrestlers, especially listening right now, that are thinking about their future, you're hearing it here from somebody who has already had such success and is only going to be more successful as the future goes on. So do not miss out on the power of prayer in your career. In sports and prayer go hand in hand. I have learned, having a lot of friends in the space, I've learned to stop praying for them to win, because I realize there's somebody praying on the other side for the other person to win, and just praying for health and focus and peace and clarity go so far. And I've texted some of the rest of them like, dude, praying for you to win. Like there's people on both sides praying for that. That one that might cross each other out. But yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm excited. So what's next? Just kind of trying to make that decision, and then, probably end of the month, make a decision and then pursue that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, the toughest decisions are the oftentimes the greatest decisions and impacts on your life. So I've been taking it seriously, and a lot of people feel they have need to tell me their advice for me, but I just go. I mean, I thank you. I guess I go straight to God, though. I mean, I don't. It's just the answer to everything.
It is, man. And there's a lot of people who don't have to live with the consequences of decisions you make.
Yep.
You do, and you have to live with those. So, advice is sometimes appreciated, but it's also like a grain of salt. So, Aaron, I'm gonna let you go. Enjoy your Easter. I appreciate you making some time. Thank you for being transparent with me. I really appreciate it. I'm sure fans of all these schools appreciate it. Any final words here before I let you go?
I'm just grateful you had me on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Awesome, man. Thank you. We'll chat soon. Guys, if you want to follow Aaron, I'm going to link up his Instagram. Are you on Twitter?
Nope, just Instagram.
Might have to get on Twitter. We'll talk about that offline. But all right, go follow him. I'm going to link it up below. Aaron, have a great day, man. We'll chat soon.
And the beat goes on.